Joining us right here in the studio, Sharren Haskel, a member of the Israeli parliament in Netanyahu's ruling Likud Party. Sharren, great to have you here with us.
Hello, good evening.
So there is a reality in Israel. Israel does not only have Jewish residents, Jewish citizens, and the critics, as we just heard, and we just heard some of those controversial clauses in this bill say this negates the basic concept of being a democratic state, and this will even allow for written codified discrimination against Israel's minorities.
Yeah, well, I think they're really blowing hot air in the balloon and just trying to make a big drama out of it. There's the reality in Israel. And the reality is that there's different towns and different cities. Some are cities that usually Jews live in, or towns, or Arab community, Muslim or Christian or Druze or Bedouin.
But this bill is for the whole state of Israel, not just for cities.
Well, that's the thing. The kibbutzim, they are actually a community, right, of a specific type also of agenda and things like that. And also the Bedouin towns in the Negev. In 2014, there were 22 towns created by the State of Israel. 7 of them were directed specifically to the Bedouin citizens in the Negev. The rest, any Israeli citizen would be able to apply and get in, but 7 of them are exclusively for Bedouins. And so in that term, if we come and say this doesn't exist, we're just ignoring the reality of what's happening today in Israel, and to be frank, also in other countries as well.
But Sharren, the Jewish character of the state is enshrined in the Declaration of Independence. It's enshrined in the national anthem, the Hatikva. It's enshrined in the flag. Why does Israel need this legislation, particularly clauses such as this that legally sets up exclusive communities?
So when we speak about the vision of Israel, we have legislation we call it Chukei Yesod. Foundation laws. They're meant to be the foundation for our future constitution. Okay? In that foundation laws, we only have we have more also about the army and the Knesset, but 2 main laws who describe the future of Israel. The freedom and the respect of human beings, equality, and the other one is about occupation, work, and workforce and labor and legislation to do with that. We want to make sure that in our future constitution, we will also have the vision of the State of Israel as a Jewish state, as the Declaration of Independence, and say exactly like that. We are bringing it into one of our foundation legislation.
So let's talk about the future. So if you want, if the idea of this bill is to have the identity, the Jewishness of the State of Israel as part of Israel's future codified, that means then also that the future is planned to include, again, clauses like this, downgrading the status of Arabic as a language, as a national language, allowing for exclusive communities.
Absolutely.
So what does that say about the vision of the future?
Absolutely not. All Israeli citizens, including Arab, Muslims, Christian, Druze, have similar civilian rights, exactly the same. The only difference is that the character of Israel, its symbols, its national anthem, its language, is described as the vision of having a Jewish symbol, Jewish language, and this is a cultural thing. This is actually something quite normal in most democratic countries. If you look on the British flag, it's got a cross. The Swiss flag has a cross. The Turkish flag has a crescent. Even though it's a religious symbol, it doesn't mean that the state is not democratic. It's just trying to describe the character and the culture, the main culture that they will have.
Arab citizens of Israel would say, because we have to bring in those other voices, would say, well, we are Arab Muslims, we're citizens of Israel, we are part of the culture of Israel.
Absolutely, and we absolutely respect them as well. And this is why we actually gave a special status for the Arabic language. We could have said as well, we would like to give a special status also to the Russian language and the English language, but we didn't do that. Out of respect and understanding that they are part of the Israeli community, we gave a specific special state for the Arabic language as well, making sure that it will still be written in all government office, in every official government leaflet that's going to come out. Any kind of aspect like that, it's going to be still in it.
Sharren, President Rivlin, who comes from your own party has spoken out against the bill. You talk about, you're saying other countries have taken these steps. The legal advisors of your own government have warned that this legislation could hurt Israel in the international arena. Shouldn't their opinions be taken into consideration?
Well, we do take all opinions into considerations, and the majority in our government, in our coalition, says that this is actually what happens today in Israel. We are not forcing anyone to go out into a gated community or anything like that to describe it. But if the state choose to approve a certain town that's towards a specific minority or ethnicity or anything that comes, it is possible to actually approve it. And we've seen, you know, even
but to the exclusion of everybody else. What if somebody intermarries with somebody from another faith?
Well,
then that person can no longer live in that community?
Well,
They're going to be kicked out?
You live in Israel, and so you understand that there is plenty of place to accept everybody from different shapes and colors and everything.
Else.
Well, obviously, if we look even on kibbutzes, usually it's done by agreement with the community
as well. But agreement, not
so
codified in law, Sharren.
Yeah, I know, and this is sometimes unfortunate, as we've seen in some high Supreme Court ruling that was received when Psak Din, the court, the judgments of Avitan, about the town of Segev Shalom, where it's a Bedouin community, and he asked to actually purchase the land. He's Jewish, and he asked to join this town. The High Supreme Court ruled that he's not allowed to actually purchase that.
On a case by case.
We're going to pause right here, Sharren.
But this is the reality in Israel, and so we should allow, if it's Bedouin or if it's ultra-Orthodox or if it's secular.
Hold that thought. We're out for a quick break. The Likud member, a member of Netanyahu's ruling Likud Party, Sharren Haskel, is still here with us. We're going to continue the conversation. First, let's hear what we heard this week from an Arab member of Israeli parliament, Aida Tuma Sliman.
This law, the basic law, is ignoring democracy, is ignoring equality, and only sticking to Jewishness, is ignoring 20% of the citizens of the state of Israel. Talking about the need of definition of the state of Israel, I think this is a need that is existing, it seems to be, at Netanyahu's heart, not in the feelings of the people.
Sharren, so your reaction, first of all, to her.
Well, I think it's overreacting and exaggerating. I think that most Arab Israeli citizens do understand. They've lived with this reality for a long time, as it's been describing our independence scroll.
Yeah, the Declaration of
Independence. Israel is a Jewish state. It's a Jewish state by its character. It's meant to be a shelter for the Jewish people as well, encourage Aliyah. This is something that we've been living here in this country.
But there are Arab citizens of Israel, just like that lawmaker we just heard.
And obviously, the Arab citizens of Israel have equal rights as citizens, civilian rights as Israelis. Yes, there's a difference in the cultural aspect and the cultural legislation, but they are allowed to purchase the same, to work the same, study the same, exactly the same.
You keep saying the critics are overreacting. Isn't it the government that's overreacting? Who in the public is calling for this bill? It is only one coalition member, the Jewish Home Party, that's making it a condition. Why is it needed?
Absolutely not. This is actually a bill that the Likud Party has been pushing for quite a few years now. Even before this coalition, Avi Dichter, the party member, he's the chairman of the Foreign Affairs and Defense Committee, he's the one who wrote and actually pushed this legislation to come through in order for that to be part of the vision of how we want to see Israel in the future in its constitution as well. This was a condition of the Likud Party. We're proud of it. We support it. We get the entire support. And to be honest, even members from the opposition like Yoel Chasson and others have already supported in the past far more extreme national laws like that.
That's not true. Members of your own coalition, the ultra-Orthodox parties, have expressed reservations. They say they don't want it to come for a vote, and that if they have to, they would only vote because they're forced by coalition discipline.
Yeah, as we work in a coalition, sometimes there are issues that they want to pass, and sometimes there are issues that the Likud wants to pass. Sometimes we're not 100% with legislation that they're passing, and sometimes they're not 100% with the legislation that we're passing. But the vision on how we want to see the future of Israel mainly comes on the shoulders of the Likud Party, who received the majority of mandates. And when we say, as a Likud Party, that this is an important bill, we want to see that as the future vision of the state of Israel, we want to see it as part of the future constitution, then we will make it happen.